Hello, my name is Blake Cannell and I'm in the Workspace Services group covering Citrix Smart Tools. In this video, I'll be highlighting Smart Tools and some of the key components available to you as Citrix service providers. The graphic on the right highlights the core Citrix mission, the secure delivery of apps and data across any network, and the key Citrix product families that support that mission. Surrounding it, you'll see four key components that make up Smart Tools. Smart Tools simplify day-to-day operations for Citrix administrators by providing use case-driven, intuitive functionality available as services delivered via Citrix Cloud. You can use Smart Tools for deployments on public clouds or with on-premises data center systems. As Citrix service providers, you can use these tools to help manage and deliver Citrix offerings more effectively to your customers. Active CSPs have access to Smart Tools at no fee. I'll show you how to log in and access them in a moment. You can use these tools to reduce operational costs by proactively maintaining healthy systems with SmartCheck, control expenses and increase profitability if running customer deployments on public clouds via SmartScale. This powers on and off underlying systems based on usage or load. You can deliver consistent, reliable, and repeatable XenApp and XenDesktop deployments via blueprints in SmartBuild. And you can more easily transition customers to current XenApp and XenDesktop with the built-in migration tools. I'll be covering key aspects of Smart Tools. So let's start with a component we call SmartBuild. Getting XenApp or XenDesktop environments up and running can take quite a bit of time. The idea behind SmartBuild is to automate many of the steps to deliver deployments more quickly, more reliably, with repeatability, and ultimately more securely. With the use of Citrix and partner-validated blueprints, which are a collection of scripts, you don't have to relearn the process of deployment every time. So let's go ahead and take a look at the product now. To log into Smart Tools, simply go to smart.cloud.com. When you first arrive, you'll need to put in your username and password. You can try using your existing Citrix credentials if you have them. If you don't have them, you can come down here to this line item that says do not have an account and sign up and try for free. What this does is it creates a Citrix Cloud account for you. And again, as a Citrix service provider, there's no fee to use Citrix Smart Tools, and you'll have access to all of the functionality of all of Smart Tools once you create your Citrix Cloud account the first time. If you have the account, again, you simply log in and you'll be off and running with Citrix Smart Tools. As you can see here, I've logged into smart.cloud.com and it brings me to the overview screen for Smart Tools. And let's just take a quick tour. This is the home button to bring you back to this overview screen. The four key components of Citrix Smart Tools are laid out for you here in these panels: Smart Build, Smart Migrate, Smart Check, Smart Scale. And again, we were going to start with Smart Build. Along the top, you can access the four main components as well through the menu items. In addition, there's some other settings along the top that are important. And in fact, before we move into Smart Build, I thought I would just show the Resources and Settings section. This is where you add a resource location to Smart Tools. So when you're deploying a Citrix workload, you want to deploy to either a hypervisor or to a public cloud, you need to establish a connection to that deployment location. And the way you do that is through, again, Resources and Settings. You can see here I've already established some public cloud resources as well as behind the firewall on premises here at Citrix with Zen Server. And it's a very simple process. Click the Add Resource Location button. You can see the different supported resource locations that we have today. Azure and AWS for public clouds, as well as Zen Server, vSphere, and Hyper-V for hypervisors that can be run, again, typically on premises in a data center. And you can select the resource location that you want to connect to. In this case, I just happen to choose Amazon Web Services. I can create a resource name, and then I literally just import or insert my access key ID and secret key. Those are two items that I have from Amazon, and click Add, and I've established a connection. And you can see here I've already done or already established a connection in the case of AWS and Zen Server and other resources. Very simple and easy to connect Smart Tools to a resource location so it knows how to access your deployment target. Let's go back to the overview screen. I'll use the little home button. And that brings us into Smart Build. And again, Smart Build, this is where I use blueprints to deploy workloads, Zen apps and desktop and others onto a resource location. You can see here I have a library with a variety of what we call blueprints already in here. I'm going to move over to the blueprint catalog just to show you where I got these blueprints. So the blueprints come with Smart Tools. There's a variety of them that are provided by Citrix. A Zen Mobile POC, proof of concept, a Zen app and Zen desktop without SQL deployment, a Zen app and Zen desktop proof of concept blueprint. You can see a variety of different types. I can deploy the Zen app secure browser. There's also components I can deploy. Netscaler VPX, Docker Swarm is down here, Apache Mesos. We also, scrolling down here, I have Citrix Ready partner blueprints from a variety of our partners. And then there's a community section where people have contributed blueprints as part of the community development. These are not supported by Citrix. They're just interesting blueprints that you can take a look at. So scrolling up to the top, one of the more popular blueprints that I use is the Zen app Zen desktop POC blueprint. And we can view information about what this blueprint does, and this is common through all of the blueprints that are available. It tells you which version of the blueprint, who published it, it describes what the blueprint does, and then it provides a high-level architecture of the blueprint. So you can see in this case we're going to deploy a Zen app Zen desktop domain controller, delivery controller, server VDA, a Bastion server if I need to. And in this case, the blueprint supports Zen app Zen desktop 7.12, as well as 7.11 and the 7.6 LTSR release. So that's a high-level description of what the blueprint is all about. To get even more detail, I can click on View Blueprint, and this will dive into specifics about the blueprint. Applicable resource locations. In this case, this blueprint deploys to any resource location, so it's a very wide-ranging blueprint. Talks about some of the blueprint preparation notes down below here, what you need to do to prepare for deployment of this blueprint. But here I've clicked on the Deploy tab within the blueprint, and this actually shows you the actual steps that this blueprint will run. So the first thing it does is it creates a domain controller. It establishes administrator credentials as part of that, creates the domain controller. If deploying to AWS, there's steps there. The delivery controller. And within the delivery controller step, again, I can keep expanding out. There are 12 steps within this, this process. Talks about what the inputs are for that process. So you can really dive into each of these different steps. And in fact, here's as part of the create Zen desktop delivery controller step, when you're enabling the auto admin login, you can actually view the actual script that's used to perform this particular step. And the reason I highlight the script here is just to show you that these are scripts that are provided by Citrix in this case for this blueprint, and we validate and test these scripts, but they're also customizable. So as part of the blueprint component of Smart Tools, you have the ability to modify these scripts to suit your own needs, your own deployment specifics. And again, you can use any scripting language that is supported on the systems that you run on. So this is not a proprietary language that you have to learn as part of Smart Tools. You can use whatever scripting tool you're familiar with, and you can go ahead and modify these scripts and go from there. So lots of good stuff in the blueprints themselves. And if I head back to the catalog, you'll notice that one of the things we can do with all these blueprints, they have a, if fact, we go back to the blueprint catalog here, they have a plus button next to them, or it'll say update if there's an updated version of the blueprint, and you click on the plus button, and that adds it to your library. So when you go to Smart Tools, you'll see the different blueprints that I've added to my library. And then once I add a blueprint to my library, so every time I log into Smart Tools, these appear, I can then choose an action on that blueprint, namely I can deploy that blueprint, or I can uninstall it essentially, and I can start a deployment of the blueprint. And in this case, this is a XenApp XenDesktop POC blueprint that we just looked at, and you get the idea looking along the top here. It's that wizard process, if you will, that steps you through each of the different aspects of the blueprint. So it'll actually step you through. Where do I want to deploy this blueprint? I've made a connection to AWS. I'll choose that as my resource location. Do I want to configure a NetScaler in this case? Maybe I'll say no. And you can get the sense again that as I walk through, here's my pre-deployment checklist. This will step me through the entire process, and I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this, all the way to deployment, in this case, of a XenApp XenDesktop POC. So this dramatically reduces the amount of time it takes to get XenApp XenDesktop POCs up and running. And the other nice thing about it is you can, again, modify the blueprint or use them out of the box, but I can use this over and over and over again, and it's the same steps, the same process, and it will deploy reliably each time I use it. So again, I'm not having to rethink each time I deploy XenApp XenDesktop. What are the different parameters I need? What are the different inputs that I need? I can actually capture them all here in this blueprint process and deploy very easily. And once you deploy using blueprints, you can hop over to the Manage menu here, and you can see, in this case, I've already deployed the XenApp XenDesktop POC blueprint. I get some details. Obviously, the green checkbox means good. The status means it's up and running. And again, in this case, if we move into the details, we'll actually be able to see, specifically what it is that's actually running in the case of this particular blueprint. So it's you can do both a full deployment for various workloads, or you can get again, in this case, just the POC version of it, which deploys a limited version of XenApp XenDesktop, limited in terms of size and number of systems, but gives you enough to now be able to start creating users and getting a sense of how XenApp XenDesktop operates. So very easy to use. Again, in the Manage area, this is where I can tear down deployments if I need to. I can monitor how they're running, so this will provide some information about how the different components of this proof of concept are behaving, and so it gives me a graphical view of performance on memory and other thresholds that are available to me, disk usage. So again, it takes a second here to draw these graphs initially, but I can get a lot of information about what this POC is doing, and several other operational functions and other tasks that I can easily configure in this Manage tab. So what we've looked at so far is resources and settings. That's sort of the initial activity you might do if you want to deploy, in this case, a POC. You might need to create your resource. You do need to create a connection to a resource location. You can take a look at the blueprint catalog, add some of the existing blueprints to your library. You can then use SmartBuild to deploy those blueprints, and then once you have a deployment, you can manage them. So that's the first section, or the first component available to you in Smart Tools. And again, you could use this with your customers to more quickly get them up and running on current releases or migrated to new releases. In the next sections, what I'm going to do is go ahead and cover the other three major components of Smart Tools, and we'll take a look at those in just a second. Next, let's take a look at Smart Migrate. What this is really useful for is to move apps and policies from XenApp 6x to current 7.x. So you could use the blueprints that we just looked at to create a new XenApp deployment, and then follow that up by using Smart Migrate to move over your apps and policies. You can also move from VDI in a box as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at Smart Migrate. So as you can see, we're back here at the overview screen for Smart Tools. I'll simply select the Migrate panel and we'll get into this aspect of it. So like all things, or many things in Smart Tools, the way you get started when you move into a particular module is the first thing we want to do in a migration project is create a new project by clicking on the plus button. So I'll start a new migration project. We'll call it Test, CSP, and CSP. And you can see there are 3 different types of migrations we can do, from XenApp 6.0 or 6.5 to 7x, or from VDI in a box to XenDesktop 7x. I'll leave this as XenApp 6.5 to 7x and choose Add. And now we've created our project. And the next thing that you'll notice is when you're migrating your applications or policies, you have 2 different ways to do that, either a fully automated version of that method or a partially automated. I'm going to choose the fully automated method, but the partially automated, essentially what that does is creates the migration scripts, but then you run them manually yourself. But with the fully automated process, you can see as I scroll down here, it's really just 1, 2, 3. First is connect to a 7x site. The second is to analyze your 6.5 farm. And the third step is, of course, then to migrate those apps and policies from 6.5 to 7x. So pretty straightforward. We'll choose Next. And here, in this step, I can choose to connect to an existing 7x farm that I've created, or I can choose to connect to a farm that was created with Smart Tools. And I'll choose that option. And the reason I'm choosing that option is just to show you over here, when it says choose XenApp 7x deployment, I can actually select the XenApp XenDesktop POC that we created in the previous Smart Build section. So I can go ahead and choose that. And then, of course, I can also choose my 6.5 details as well. And again, the wizard will walk me through this process. I've already got another project that I've created previously, the XenApp migration project. So I'm going to go ahead and just click into that. And we've walked through all those steps. And I'll just close that up and show you what we have here. So what happens is, of course, the migration tool analyzes your applications. It analyzes the policies that are available for migration. And of course, it has found some, just a few simple applications here and a couple of policies that we have discovered. And if I want to migrate those over, I can choose the application, maybe Internet Explorer, for example. I've already migrated a couple, and just proceed to migration. It will create both migrated batches, so scripts that I can use later. These are scripts I can download and use at any time. But in the automated fashion, it will actually do that for me. It'll move the policies and applications from my 6.5 farm into my 7x farm. So it's a pretty straightforward process. And again, this really helps save a lot of time when you're migrating. And so for partners, we really encourage people who are working with customers who are interested in getting to the latest release of XenApp and XenDesktop, but need some help with that. This is a great tool that really complements what we just saw in the Smart Build section. Next, let's move into Smart Check. So one of the issues that we hear about from our partners and customers is that it's really disappointing to uncover an issue with a Citrix deployment only to discover that there's already a known solution for it. So what Smart Check does is it provides proactive discovery and resolution of issues on your specific Citrix environments before users are impacted. So we've seen a tremendous uptake on this module because of its ease of use, and again, the ability to set up a system where you can monitor the health of your running environments as frequently as you'd like, and be made aware of all the existing hotfixes that are available to you. So let's go ahead and take a look at what Smart Check is all about. Okay, so we're back here at our Smart Tools overview page, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at Smart Check. So I move over to the Smart Check panel. This is the newest member of the Smart Tools family. And the way Smart Check works, of course, is we connect Smart Check to a XenApp XenDesktop site and then run diagnostics on it to understand the health of that site. So we will make sure that in order to do that, we need to have a connection to the site, and we do that via a site agent. So the agent is a small piece of software that's downloaded onto the delivery controller and communicates with Smart Tools over HTTPS, so a secure channel. So that's the first thing you do is download the site agent and connect it to your site. Once you've done that, you can see here I have 2 sites that I've already connected to. You can go ahead and view your health reports. So when I come in the morning, I can go to Smart Check. I can view this health report. It gives you a schematic of your site. So you know, the end user perspective over here on the left, delivery groups, controllers, machine catalogs, and it provides visual as well as detailed information about the health of this particular site. We have 18 issues, no errors, a couple of warnings, and 16 updates. So this is the summary. I can also have this sent to me as a notification in email. So I can have this report sent as frequently as I'd like. You know, if I run this every evening, I can have this in my inbox in the morning and again get a quick snapshot of the health of my site before before end users are impacted. Before I dive into what is actually going on here, let's take a look at how we actually set up these health scans to run. There are 3 different types of checks that we run: apps and desktops health checks, site health checks, and update checks. And I'll talk a little bit about what those are in a minute. But this is where I can configure to run on a schedule. So these run every day at 2:39 in the morning Pacific time. They run these checks. It's a whole series of health checks, and then I get the reports in the morning. In addition, I can also run these checks manually by selecting each one of them individually, or perform them all at once. So I don't have to configure them to run. I can run them whenever I'd like. So a couple of options there. And let's just quickly dive into what this looks like. I'll hit the controller machine, and we'll take a look at what's going on here. I've got a couple of warnings, but I also have a hotfix that's available for me. I can choose that hotfix, and it actually on the right-hand side provides information about what the hotfix is, where the issue was found, and what the recommended fix is. In fact, it links directly to the recommended fix, which is a Knowledge Center article, and this is where I can actually download the hotfix, and it tells me in detail what it's all about, how I install it, some of the issues that were found, etc. So lots of good stuff directly inside of Smart Check to provide me with all the information I need, the specific patch, and I can install and go from there. So that's where that's the mechanics of how this works. In the next question, of course, is this looks great. I love the idea of running these health checks. What specifically are the checks? And I will just move over here to the documentation in Smart Tools. You can access this directly from within the product. But if you go to the Smart Check section, it'll talk about the 3 different types of health checks. The site health checks are basically all of the FMA services running on your site. And as you can see, as I scroll down here, there's quite a few things that we actually go ahead and scan and look for. There's apps and desktop checks to make sure that the delivery groups are actually available and ready to serve users. And then there's the hotfix checks as well. So these are the 3 different types of scans and checks you can run. And of course, we'll continue to augment them and update them as we go. And if I go back to Smart Check, I'll actually show you again, we're about to add another check for LTSR, long-term service release. So this will check to make sure you're in compliance with LTSR if you happen to be running an LTSR release. So again, we're going to be adding more checks to Smart Check as we move along, but it's a great way to keep your site healthy, up to date, ensure that users aren't impacted, and of course, having a most up-to-date site also is a really key element of having a secure site. So we're really not only ensuring users aren't impacted with downtime, but also ensuring that our systems are as secure as possible. So our final stop is with Smart Scale. This will be the 4th module, key module that makes up Smart Tools. And really, when you're running on public clouds, there's a lot of benefit to doing that but it can be costly if you don't manage them well. You definitely don't want to pay for infrastructure you're not using. And SmartScale enables you to power on or power off underlying infrastructure based on load or schedule, therefore optimizing the cost structure of running on a public cloud. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this works. Okay, so let's move over to SmartScale. Click on the panel, brings us into the SmartScale section. And again, if you haven't done so already, the first thing you'll want to do with SmartScale is download the site agent, make sure it's installed. Similar to SmartCheck, the agent needs to be there so that we can communicate to it and get the information we need about the site. So we'll add the site agent and get into SmartScale. You can see I have many sites that have been added here already. We'll go ahead and just click on one. We'll view information. And the first thing we can do if we check out this delivery group, if we show data for, let's see, not the last 4 hours, but maybe the last month, and this demonstration account will bring up some information for us. What this shows is our estimated savings by turning machines on and off as needed based on load or based on schedule. This gives us, again, I'll show you where you can actually fill in the information there to generate that dollar figure. Talks about how many machines are on, machines in maintenance mode, the utilization capacity. So again, similar to SmartCheck, you get a visual report right off the bat of what's going on by running SmartScale. And the magic with this is all back here on the configuration tab. First thing, of course, to do is to enable SmartScale. That's this toggle button here, very important. But if we scroll down here, we can choose between either load-based scheduling, load-based scaling, schedule-based scaling, or a combination of the two. And if we look at the load-based scaling settings, you can scale by load index or session count. And if you don't know what those are, the question mark button brings up a helpful dialog box that talks about what the metrics are. And you can set maximum load index. And again, this talks a little bit about why you'd want to do that. Or down here, you can create a schedule. So you can easily create a schedule for, perhaps on the weekends, you want to shut most of the machines off and have just a minimum number of machines. Or in your organization, if people tend to work a traditional schedule of perhaps 8 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m., you can have a lot of machines on, and then after they go home, in the evening, you can start shutting down a lot of the machines that wouldn't be used. So again, you can create a schedule, and then you can have, again, the combination of the two. In addition to all that, you can also create some additional capacity buffer. So you can always have, maybe a 20% buffer just in case, you need to fine-tune this a little further and you're not exactly sure what the best method is, either schedule or load or a combination of the two. Maybe I always have a little bit of extra capacity just in case, so I can do that. And then down here in US dollars, this is where you can crank in the number in terms of your estimated cost in US dollars per instance, machine instance, and that's what's used to calculate on the previous page the information that we saw there. So it's really going into this configuration tab is how you set up SmartScale. And then again, when you're back here, you can always take a look at the health or the savings and the status of all the different machines that are running on SmartScale. So we've seen some tremendous benefit to this. Again, when running Citrix workloads on public clouds, just being able to automate this, have the machines turn off when not in use, it's a tremendous amount of savings. If you think about public cloud, the meter is always running. The big benefit of leveraging someone else's data center is great, but again, you don't want to be paying for that if you're not using it, and this provides that information. And in addition to all that, you can see events, machine activity. This will actually show what's going on with each of the individual machines, the different events that are taking place on all these machines. This takes a little while to bring up all this data, but every time a machine is moved out of maintenance mode or in maintenance mode, it logs an event. So you can get all the event and machine detail you need from this screen right here. So Smart Scale, very easy. Just enable it. Make sure you install the site agent and choose the metrics that you want to use in terms of how you want to enable the scaling activity by load or by schedule, and away you go. That was a brief introduction to the key components that make up Citrix Smart Tools. We encourage all of our Citrix service providers to take advantage of these tools with their customers. To do so, go to smart.cloud.com.